Now joining my political panel this afternoon is Bruce Hawker, the former Labor advisor, here with me in Sydney, and in Canberra, Grahame Morris, political consultant and former advisor to the Howard government. Now, first I want to have a look at Tony Abbott on the world stage. And Bruce Hawker, first to you. We have seen him certainly make himself felt. He's made some comments and he hasn't been backward and coming forward about Vladimir Putin, also climate change and the fact that we shouldn't apologise for some of our intelligence gathering. Is this a welcomed, I guess, change from not going softly on the world stage?
Well, I think in international diplomacy you do need a deft hand, and I'm not sure that Tony Abbott is really revealing that at the moment. He has to be very careful about some of the pronouncements that he makes, particularly around Indonesia. I think that's the most important relationship that we need to work on at the moment, because I think it's the most sensitive and they are our closest neighbour, and there's 250 million people living there. So I think he has to be careful about those things. I think he is appealing to an audience back home. Perhaps he wants to distract a bit of attention from some of the other issues which are starting to cause him real problems with his budget and so forth. But all in all, I think he'll probably get through it, but I'm not certain that it'll be seen as a tour de force, if you like, when he comes back from that trip.
Yeah, we'll look at those domestic issues in a moment, but Grahame Morris, does he get a gold star for his first visit? Of course, he has gone to Canada, where he does feel comfortable. He's very good friends with Stephen Harper. Perhaps he could get a few tips about how to boost his popularity and make that translate back home.
Well, that's a good idea. Look, the Canadians and us, we're good mates. We think the same. But, you know, I don't view leaders through the prism of foreign affairs. It is one part of their job. And when you think about it over the years, Malcolm Fraser, you know, John Howard, Bob Hawke, even Keating, Julia Gillard, they've been quite good at this. Even Kevin Rudd only managed to upset about a third of the world. Look, so far, I can't see that he's done anything wrong at all. He's represented our views on the international stage, and so he should.
Yeah, he is meeting Barack Obama this week as well, and it's been suggested that perhaps he won't get in fact, a friendly reception that he did or will with Stephen Harper tomorrow. Do you think that the differing views on climate change, Grahame Morris, will be an issue, and how do you think they will be handled?
Well, look, the President may well raise it, but our Prime Minister is quietly entitled to tell the President that he hasn't even got his own politicians lined up. So he got to line up his own people before he gives us lectures. Now, look, apart from that, it will be fine. But I have seen, you know, some really bizarre things come out of the local Labor Party, you know, where the Prime Minister should be meeting a few, you know, banking bureaucrats while he's in the US. He's talking to the boss of the Federal Reserve. He's talking to the Secretary of Treasury. He's talking to the President of the United States of America. Goodness gracious me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Bruce, isn't it? You know what these schedules are like to put together. He's not meeting with the World Bank. He's not meeting with the IMF. If he gets time, he will do so. But that's fair enough, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I'm not too fussed about that. I'd be more worried about the message he sends the world about climate change, for example. I mean, one of the interesting things about that...
Isn't it true that Barack Obama, in what he said 2 weeks ago, is a move towards direct action? So perhaps it's spin, but is it some kind of endorsement of Tony Abbott's policy?
Well, we'll just have to wait and see. I don't think so. I think they'll be much more attracted to a market-driven trade in carbon. I think that's why most of the world's looking. The interesting thing about this is that, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, Australia was well ahead of the field in this, and in fact, at a time when we were really espousing the need for an emissions trading scheme, the rest of the world was sitting back and saying, oh, we've got much bigger issues to worry about right now. The global financial crisis was really pounding the economies in Northern America and Europe. Now they've caught up and we're going in reverse. I mean, I think that's really indicative of the world that we live in at the moment. We're just out of sync with prevailing attitudes to what is really the most pressing issue of the 21st century.
Yeah, Grahame Morris, your response to that, but also looking at Stephen Harper and his journey. He was opposition leader. He's made some very similar tough decisions in Canada. Now he is seen as quite popular in his own country. Is there some lessons that Tony Abbott can learn there?
Well, look, I agree. The Canadian Prime Minister is actually performing well in what is quite a difficult country at times to organise. But look, it's different circumstances and all that sort of thing. And I just don't understand Bruce's sort of theory on this, that somehow or other, you know, Australia should commit suicide on climate change. You know, we've got energy resources, and we should use them. You know, I can't see anything wrong with everyone from, you know, my neighbour through to, you know, business and whatnot, doing some direct action stuff rather than, you know, we and half a dozen countries getting out there and saying, oh, we're going to close down our sort of main sources of electricity. It's just ridiculous.
Well, it is just that. It's just stuff, really, isn't it? I mean, we don't need to get into big an argument about this now, but essentially the world, except for Grahame Morris, has made up their mind that climate change is a pressing issue. The 21st century is going to be dominated by this.
I just want to throw something in here, and it's something that Bob Hawke said at the press club last week, is that Australia should be looking at nuclear, and we know that Bob Hawke is an advocate, but also we should be, for want of a better term, a dumping ground for nuclear waste. We have the safest remote reserves. Now, Bruce Hawker, you know this is politically
pretty
difficult,
tough. Yeah.
But can you see a time that we might ever get over that?
Look, it's possible that one day, if they can really guarantee that dumping nuclear waste is a safe option for Australia, then perhaps we will get to that point. You know, it's only 50 or so years ago that we were doing atomic testing in Australia, something which people forget, but Maralinga is an area, it's still a no-go area for people. So we can't ignore the fact that this has happened in Australia before, and that large parts of our country were therefore declared off limits as a result. Too bad for the Aboriginal people that had to be evacuated from those areas when they were testing. So, you know, this is a significant problem. I'm not saying we should say no to nuclear energy ultimately, because if it is able to be properly harnessed, then it is clean. But when it goes wrong, it goes horribly wrong. Just ask the people of Fukushima.
Yeah, Grahame Morris, look, Malcolm Turnbull has been an advocate for nuclear power, not exactly taking the nuclear waste, but can you see this debate ever moving on?
Well, look, I hope so. The problem at the moment is the environmentalists. And how ridiculous would they be? They claim that the world's going to end in a few years because of global warming, and yet the clean energy solution, which is nuclear power, they're not interested in. And I think when they went down that path a few years ago, a lot of people just threw up their hands and went, oh God, what's the good of the Greens? You know, I think we ought to be moving that way. It's probably not going to happen in the next 20 years, but in the next 40, we should have nuclear power plants that are nice and clean and providing energy.
And just while we're on the topic of Malcolm Turnbull, Grahame Morris, we haven't spoken to you since the last fracas of the last week. What's your take on it all? Is it a concerted campaign from Bolt and Alan Jones, or is it just part of the political game, if you like?
Look, there's no doubt that the government was having a bit of difficulty selling its budget, and I thought this was an absolutely beautiful, a stunningly executed strategy to get the budget off the front page. And everyone played their role beautifully. Look, last week in politics we had dragons, we had flying pigs, we had unicorns, we had Pegasus, we had sort of every mythical sort of thing you could think of running around, including Malcolm Turnbull is moving on the leadership. You know, Malcolm has been performing, I don't know how to say it, but
superbly.
But to script, superbly, that'll do. He has played the game extremely well, and I think everyone overreacted to, you know, half a prawn he had with Clive Palmer. People were talking about a storm in a teacup. It's more of a tsunami in a matchbox.
Bruce
Yeah.
Hawker, do you agree with that
Forgive me for
sentiment?
disagreeing, but look, Malcolm Turnbull is a smart guy. He knows
He's
that
not. He's not having a tilt at the leadership at the moment.
But he's a smart guy. He knows that if he wants to cause trouble inside the Liberal Party, or just remind people that he's somebody who can sit down and do deals with Clive Palmer, because this is what it all comes down to, then he's the guy. And you don't go and have lunch in one of the leading Chinese restaurants in the city without actually knowing that people are going to come and have a good look at you.
Do you think Labor
and
were
talk
just
about it.
quite enjoying this from the sidelines in a way, happy that they're not having to be talking about leadership on their side? They were observers rather than participants at this stage.
Well, just remember this, that after the thing died down, then he went on Alan Jones and threw a bit of petrol on the flames and got Alan Jones all excited, quite hysterical. And then that night or the night after, he goes on 7:30 and won't rule out ever becoming leader of the Liberal Party. Sometimes if it squawks like a duck, it just might be one.
Some Rudd-esque moments there, you thought?
I thought he was showing his willingness and preparedness to keep that Field Marshal's baton in his backpack all the time.
OK, Bruce Hawker, Grahame Morris, stay with us. A quick break here on PM Agenda.